The Call Center Nightmare. Written and copyright by A. A. Castor. Welcome everyone to A. A. Castor Book Club. Today's story is The Call Center Nightmare. Prepare yourselves for a journey into the depths of obsession and madness, where love and horror collide in a chilling narrative. Chapter 1: The New Hire. Jack Thompson was excited about his new job at the call center. After months of unemployment, he finally felt like his life was back on track. The bustling office was a mix of ringing phones, hushed conversations, and the tapping of keyboards. Jack, a single man in his late 20s, was eager to prove himself. He had short, sandy blonde hair and piercing blue eyes that always seemed to carry a glint of curiosity. On his first day, he was introduced to his team. Among them was Laura, a woman in her early 30s. She was overweight, with curly brown hair that framed her round face and kind hazel eyes. Despite her size, there was a certain warmth about her that made Jack feel comfortable. "Welcome to the team, Jack," Laura said, extending her hand. "If you need any help, just let me know." "Thanks, Laura. I appreciate it," Jack replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, and her smile genuine. Over the next few weeks, Jack and Laura grew closer. They often had lunch together, sharing stories about their lives. Jack learned that Laura lived with her aging parents, her mother disabled and her father recovering from a stroke that left his speech garbled and difficult to understand. Despite her challenges, Laura remained upbeat and positive, a trait Jack admired. The call center itself was a maze of cubicles, each decorated with personal touches. Jack's cubicle was sparse, but Laura's was filled with photos of family, friends, and various vacation spots. She had a small collection of plush toys on her desk, adding a touch of whimsy to the otherwise drab office environment. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, Laura invited Jack out for a drink. They laughed and talked for hours at a cozy pub downtown, the conversation flowing as easily as the drinks. Jack found himself genuinely enjoying Laura's company. Chapter 2: The New Attraction. A few months into their relationship, Jack met another woman at the call center. Her name was Emily, and she was everything Laura wasn't: slim, cute, and bubbly. Emily had long, straight blonde hair and sparkling green eyes. She was always cheerful and full of energy, a stark contrast to Laura's more subdued and nurturing demeanor. Emily and Jack quickly hit it off, and it wasn't long before Jack found himself attracted to her. Feeling guilty but unable to resist, Jack started seeing Emily behind Laura's back. He felt a thrilling rush every time he was with Emily, but the guilt gnawed at him. He knew he had to end things with Laura, but he dreaded the confrontation. One evening, Jack met Laura for dinner at a small Italian restaurant they both loved. Laura was wearing a simple blue dress that accentuated her kind eyes, and her face lit up when she saw Jack. "I ordered your favorite wine," Laura said with a smile as Jack sat down. "Thanks, Laura," Jack replied, feeling a pang of guilt. "Listen, we need to talk." Laura's smile faded. "What's wrong, Jack?" Jack took a deep breath. "Laura, I've met someone else. Her name is Emily. I think it's best if we end things here." Tears welled up in Laura's eyes. "Why, Jack? Why would you do this to me?" she sobbed, her voice trembling. "Laura, I'm sorry," Jack said, trying to console her. "It's just, I have stronger feelings for Emily." Laura's expression changed from sorrow to anger. "You'll regret this, Jack. You have no idea what you've lost." Chapter 3: The Plan. Laura's heartbreak turned into a burning desire for revenge. She couldn't believe that Jack had discarded her so easily. Determined to make him pay, she began to formulate a plan. Her mind raced with thoughts of betrayal and heartbreak, and her once kind demeanor hardened with resolve. She started calling Jack, pretending to be in distress. "Jack, I need your help," she would say, her voice trembling. "I'm in danger." Jack, feeling guilty for how things had ended, reluctantly agreed to meet her. One evening, Laura called him in a panic. "Jack, please come over. It's an emergency." Jack sighed, torn between his new relationship with Emily and his lingering guilt over Laura. "All right, Laura. I'll be there soon." Chapter 4: The Trap. Jack arrived at Laura's apartment, finding the door slightly ajar. "Laura?" he called out, stepping inside. The apartment was dimly lit, the soft glow of lamps casting eerie shadows on the walls. The living room was cozy, filled with mismatched furniture and photos of Laura with her parents. There was an odd mix of scents, lavender air freshener and something metallic. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in the back of his head. Darkness consumed him as he fell to the floor. When Jack regained consciousness, he found himself tied to a chair in Laura's dimly lit living room. His head throbbed, and his vision was blurry. Laura stood before him, a twisted smile on her face. She was wearing a red dress, her hair disheveled, and her eyes wild with a mixture of fury and triumph. "Welcome back, Jack," she said sweetly. "We're going to have a little date." Jack's eyes widened in horror. The room was set up like a romantic dinner, with candles and a table set for two. But what terrified him more were the two figures in the corner, Laura's parents. Her mother was in a wheelchair, staring blankly ahead, while her father sat slumped in his chair, mumbling unintelligibly. Chapter 5: The Delusion. Laura began to talk about their future together, her voice filled with manic excitement. "I've already picked out names for our children, Jack. We'll have a boy and a girl. Isn't that wonderful?" Her eyes gleamed with a disturbing intensity. Her father mumbled something, and Laura nodded as if she understood. "Yes, Daddy. Jack will be a wonderful father." Jack struggled against his bonds, his fear escalating. "Laura, please let me go. This is insane." Laura's expression darkened. "Insane? You think I'm insane, Jack? I love you. Why don't you love me back?" Laura's father made a noise, and she turned to him. "Yes, Daddy. I'll make sure he understands." She approached Jack with a spoonful of food. "Eat, Jack. You need to keep up your strength." Jack clenched his teeth, refusing to open his mouth. Laura's eyes flashed with anger. "Open your mouth," she screamed, forcing the spoon into his mouth. Jack gagged, the taste making him nauseous. "Laura, please," he begged. "This isn't love." Laura ignored him, continuing to force-feed him. "You'll see, Jack. You'll see how much I love you." Chapter 6: The Punishment. Later that night, Laura attempted to make love to Jack while her parents watched. It was a grotesque and humiliating scene. Jack felt his stomach churn, and he vomited, the horror of the situation overwhelming him. Laura's eyes filled with tears. "Why, Jack? Why do you reject me?" Jack looked at her, desperation in his eyes. "Please, Laura, let me go." Her father made another noise, and Laura nodded. "You're right, Daddy. He needs to be punished." She grabbed a belt and began to whip Jack, her anger and frustration pouring out with each strike. Jack cried out in pain, his pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears. Days turned into a blur of torment for Jack. Laura continued her twisted version of their relationship, alternating between affection and punishment. Jack knew he had to escape, but he was weak and the ropes were tight. One night, while Laura was in another room, Jack managed to loosen the ropes. His hands were raw and bleeding, but he didn't stop. He finally freed himself and stumbled towards the door. As he reached for the handle, Laura's father made a noise, alerting her. She rushed into the room, fury in her eyes. "Where do you think you're going?" she screamed. Jack grabbed a nearby vase and threw it at her. It shattered against her head, and she fell to the floor, dazed. He ran out of the apartment, his heart pounding. He didn't stop running until he reached the nearest police station. Chapter 7: The Aftermath. Jack told the police everything, his voice shaking with fear. They immediately went to Laura's apartment and found her unconscious, her parents still in their seats. Laura was arrested and taken to a psychiatric hospital. Her parents were placed in a care facility. Jack tried to return to his normal life, but the trauma lingered. He quit his job at the call center and moved to a different city, hoping to start fresh. But the memories of that night haunted him. He had survived a nightmare, but the scars it left would never fully heal. Chapter 8: Jack's Struggle. Months passed, but Jack couldn't escape the nightmares. He would wake up in a cold sweat, Laura's crazed eyes and the haunting image of her parents imprinted in his mind. He began seeing a therapist, Dr. Elaine Morgan, to help him cope with the trauma. Dr. Morgan's office was a calm sanctuary, filled with plants and soft lighting. "Tell me about your dreams, Jack," she said, her voice soothing. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a calm demeanor, qualities that made Jack feel at ease. Jack took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "I see Laura. She's always there, looking at me with those eyes. And her parents. They're always watching like silent ghosts. Sometimes, I feel the ropes around my wrists, the belt on my back. It's like I'm still there." Dr. Morgan nodded, jotting down notes. "These dreams are manifestations of your trauma. It's important to confront these fears, to understand them." Jack ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady his nerves. "How do I do that?" "We'll work through it together," Dr. Morgan said reassuringly. "We'll start by talking more about your time with Laura. It's crucial to face what happened, piece by piece." Chapter 9: Flashbacks and Therapy. Over the next few sessions, Jack recounted every detail of his relationship with Laura. He spoke about their initial friendship, the lunches, the laughs, and the growing closeness that led to their brief romance. He remembered her warmth, her kindness, and the way she had seemed so genuinely happy in his presence. "She wasn't always like that," Jack said one day, staring out the window. "Laura was kind and caring, but something changed when I told her about Emily." Dr. Morgan leaned forward. "What do you think triggered that change?" Jack sighed. "I think she felt betrayed, like she had given so much of herself and received nothing in return. But I never meant to hurt her." Dr. Morgan nodded. "It's important to remember that her actions were her own. You can feel empathy for her, but you are not responsible for her choices." Chapter 10: The Dark Descent. As Jack continued therapy, Laura's condition in the psychiatric hospital worsened. The doctors observed her talking to herself, often referencing Jack and their imagined future together. She would sit for hours, staring at the wall, a haunting smile on her face. One day, a nurse found her scribbling in a notebook. It was filled with detailed plans for a wedding, children's names, and even drawings of a house where she and Jack would live. The doctors knew her obsession was deep-rooted and dangerous, but they struggled to reach her. Chapter 11: The Return. Jack's progress in therapy was slow but steady. He found solace in his new city, making friends and starting a new job. He even began dating again, though cautiously. Life was beginning to feel normal again. One evening, as he was returning home from work, he noticed a familiar figure standing outside his apartment building. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized Laura's father, his face twisted in a grimace, speaking in those same garbled, unintelligible words. Jack froze, fear gripping him. "What are you doing here?" The old man stepped closer, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and desperation. He pointed towards Jack's apartment, trying to communicate something, but Jack couldn't understand. Before Jack could react, he felt a sharp pain in his side. He looked down to see Laura, her eyes wild with rage, holding a knife. "You didn't think you could escape me, did you, Jack?" she hissed. Chapter 12: The Final Confrontation. Jack stumbled back, clutching his side. "Laura, you need help. This isn't you." Laura laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the empty street. "You don't understand, Jack. We're meant to be together. You belong to me." She lunged at him again, but Jack managed to dodge her. He ran towards his apartment, desperate to find a way to defend himself. Laura's father continued to shout in his garbled language, a twisted cheerleader to the horror unfolding. Jack burst into his apartment and slammed the door behind him, fumbling to lock it. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911, his hands shaking. 911, what's your emergency? There's a woman trying to kill me. She's outside my apartment, Jack shouted. Stay on the line, sir, help is on the way. The door rattled as Laura pounded on it. Jack, open the door. We need to finish this. Jack backed away, his eyes darting around the room for a weapon. He grabbed a lamp, holding it like a bat. The pounding grew louder, more frantic. Chapter 13. The Tragic End. The door finally gave way, and Laura charged in, her eyes burning with fury. Jack swung the lamp, striking her across the face. She screamed and fell to the floor, clutching her head. Why, Jack? She sobbed. Why do you reject me? Jack felt a pang of guilt but steeled himself. This isn't love, Laura. You need help. Laura's father entered the apartment, his incoherent shouting adding to the chaos. He tried to grab Jack, but Jack pushed him away, sending the old man stumbling. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Jack felt a glimmer of hope. It's over, Laura. The police are coming. Laura's face twisted in rage. You think they can save you? You think you can escape me? She lunged at him one last time, but Jack was ready. He swung the lamp again, this time knocking her out cold. She collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Breathing heavily, Jack looked around, feeling the adrenaline pumping through his veins. He thought he was safe, but suddenly, Laura's father grabbed a knife from the kitchen and stabbed Jack in the back. Jack fell to the floor, the pain overwhelming him. He turned his head to see Laura's father, his face contorted with anger. If you won't be with my daughter, then no one will, the old man muttered, his voice clearer than it had ever been before. Jack's vision blurred as he lay on the floor, bleeding out. The last thing he heard was the sound of the police breaking down the door and shouting orders. Chapter 14. The Aftermath. The police stormed the apartment, quickly subduing Laura's father and tending to Jack. But it was too late. Jack's life slipped away before the paramedics could save him. Laura was taken back to the psychiatric hospital, her obsession with Jack now a haunting memory. Her father was charged with murder and sent to prison. Chapter 15. The Epilogue. News of Jack's tragic death spread quickly, shocking his friends, family, and colleagues. Emily was devastated, unable to comprehend the horror that had befallen him. Jack's funeral was a somber affair, filled with mourning and regret. Those who knew him remembered his kindness and the potential his life had held. In the psychiatric hospital, Laura continued to dream of her life with Jack, her mind unable to accept the reality of his death. She would sit for hours, talking to the empty air as if Jack were still with her, planning their future together. Jack's story became a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked obsession and the fragility of life. Though he was gone, his memory lived on in the hearts of those who loved him, a beacon of light extinguished too soon. And somewhere, in the depths of Laura's twisted mind, she still believed that one day, she and Jack would be together again, forever. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, please share this podcast with your friends and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to visit my website at www.tonyc.info for more content, updates, and exclusive behind-the-scenes insights. This podcast is mainly supported by listeners like you. If you want to help keep the stories coming, consider supporting me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/JTAC. Even just $1 a month makes a huge difference and helps me continue to create the content you love. Thank you again for listening. Your support means the world to me. Until next time, stay safe and keep exploring the unknown.